In this short video, I want to share a tip with you guys to make your sculptures a lot better and to get rid of a beginner mistake that I see all the time. And that tip is simply this, that when you're sculpting and when you're texturing, getting to the stage where you're trying to refine the sculpture, you want to come across the form rather than along the form. That's what we're going to be talking about. Typically, once I've laid in the clay, there will be a texture something like this with the little pieces of clay that I've put in place as I built out the forms. You really want the forms to be well established before you get into texturing. Primary forms and the secondary forms should be accurate. If they're not accurate, it's going to be very difficult to find those forms while you're texturing. So basically the muscles, the anatomy should all be in place. The proportions should be right, the gesture should be right, all of those basic sculpting principles. But then once you get to texturing, that's when you want to think about coming across the form rather than along the form. Now, it's okay if you're just trying to get, let's say, the cylinder of the arm. Here you can see that cylinder that's kind of coming down. It's okay every once in a while to come along the form. Maybe you want to change the outline a little bit and you just find it easier to come along the form. But then once the form is basically in place and you basically have that cylinder, then you want to focus primarily on coming across the form. And what I'm doing is I'm taking this tool. This is a spatula tool that I got in a sculpting set, flat spatula tool for texturing. And basically what I'm thinking about is the form is coming in this direction. And so I want to kind of crosshatch and come across this way and then across the other way. And I'm rolling that tool between my thumb and forefinger as I'm coming over the surface. You could just practice like rolling the tool as you're moving. And it takes a little bit to build up that muscle memory, but with texturing, there's always a lot to do. I'm just coming across the form, trying not to lose any of the details that I've established. All of the little muscles and forms, hopefully I've been thoughtful as I place those. And so as I'm texturing, I really want to avoid erasing all of that hard work that has gone into finding those forms in the first place. If you like this type of content, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell if you'd like to be notified about future content. This is something that you can see in ancient sculptures where they were sculpting in stone and they would use toothed chisels and they would come across the form from one direction and then they would kind of cross-hatch across the form in another direction with those tooth chisels to rough out the forms. And then they would smooth everything out and get it really nice and clean. But you can see from those unfinished sculptures that they were coming across the form. And that's just a much easier way to find the subtle softness and suppleness of skin and these soft, rounded, organic forms that comprise the entire figure. And this was a game changer when I learned it because it really does elevate your sculpture. I don't know what it is about the difference between coming along the form. Let's just do some marks so you guys can see. So if we're doing it like a beginner would. So there's just something about that texture that it doesn't look very good. And then when we come and wrap around the form, it just instantly feels better. It feels more natural. It feels more realistic. And the texture is basically the same. You can still see a lot of the texture marks when I'm doing this. And this is a question that I get all the time. How do you make your texture so smooth? How do you get your sculptures to look so smooth and accurate? I wouldn't say that my sculptures are necessarily that smooth. I call it a lightly tooled texture, so you can still see the tool marks if you look closely. But what they're really referring to is that the forms feel right. So here you can see that I've come along the form of the rib cage. And so to get rid of those, I'm just gonna roll my tool mark over the surface to soften up those forms, to soften up that texture. If it's rounded, then maybe you can come at it from different directions. And avoiding repetition, coming at it from different directions, this can help to really soften things up and make it look more attractive and more thought out. Thinking about it as if you're cross-hatching, where you're coming at it from one direction and then you come at it from another direction. And that way you're able to find the form in a way that just feels better. So try this out on a sculpture that you're working on or on your next sculpture, and maybe take some references before and after and compare the two and see if this doesn't actually help make your sculpture look just a little bit better. All right, I'm Andrew Joseph Keith. I'm the instructor for the Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course over at Proko.com. as well as the portrait sculpting course and the hand sculpting course. So if you're interested in learning more about figurative representation using traditional clay building methods, then I hope you'll check out those courses. There's links to those in the description below. If you like this video, you might also like the video that I did comparing clay sculpting with stone sculpting. All right, stay creative, stay productive. Hopefully I'll see you again soon in another video.